Thank you, Senator. It's always hard when you're away for 3 or 4 weeks to get back into the saddle, so to speak. And I was telling someone, when you have to go back to preparing sermons after a few weeks break, it's sometimes like pulling teeth, which of course you don't really want. So it's hard, but I watched a film when I was off from 2007 entitled The Bucket List. So let me take a cue from The Bucket List. And the opening scene of The Bucket List depicts this climber moving up the majestic, snow-covered Himalayan mountains. And the voice of Morgan Freeman, that brilliant voice, who plays Carter Chambers in the film, says, "Edward Harriman Cole died in May." I can't do Morgan Freeman, so, but I'll tell you what he said. Edward Harriman Cole died in May. It was a Sunday afternoon, and there wasn't a cloud in the sky. It's difficult to understand the sum of a person's life. Some people would tell you it's measured by the ones left behind. Some believe it can be measured in faith. Some say by love. Other folks say life has no meaning at all. Me? I believe that you measure yourself by the people who measure themselves by you. But what I can tell you for sure is that by any measure, Edward Cole lived more in his last days on earth than most people manage to wring out in a lifetime. I know that when he died, his eyes were closed and his heart was open. I almost feel like that's a scripture reading. Perhaps you remember The Bucket List, just from the mention of it at first. A lot of you have seen it. And Edward Cole, played by Jack Nicholson, is this wealthy, cynical elitist who hasn't a friend in the world. And Carter Chambers is this motor mechanic. He had wanted to be a professor of history in his earlier years, so he was highly intelligent. And he has this good and wholesome Christian family and Christian life. In their mid-60s, as fate would have it, they both wind up in the same room in one of the hospitals that Edward Cole owns, both staring in the face of cancer. And after treatment, both are declared terminal with 6 months to a year to live. Well, in the midst of the news, Chambers starts writing. And he's making a list of things, and Cole wonders, what are you doing? What are you doing? And Carter Chambers said, well, I'm writing a list of things that I want to do before I kick the bucket. And Cole likes that idea, but he takes Carter's list and he looks at it and he said, this is only a half good idea. I've got better ideas. And on Carter's list, he starts writing down really important things like skydiving and kissing the most beautiful girl in the world and getting a tattoo and going on a safari, seeing the Taj Mahal, seeing the pyramids. And Cole is really eager to begin, and he encourages Carter Chambers to join him. And money is no obstacle for Cole, and they set out to fulfill their dreams. Well, mostly Cole's dreams. And I was reminded in this of my mother-in-law. We used to call her Mim, and Mim had lived a very busy life. And she was always working. She was very involved in the family business and did that most of the time overseeing the whole financials and all that sort of thing. And then that was in North Carolina, and then 10 days a month she would be up in Chicago looking after the financials for a very busy car dealership there. They didn't want to let her go when she moved to North Carolina, so they kept her on 10 days a month. She would go back and forth and back and forth. Well, she was working so much, somewhere in her mid-50s, she decided that she had just about enough of that and she was going to do life differently. She continued to work, but she did set aside a bit of time for herself. Family business was always connected with the aircraft industry, so she decided, I'm going to learn to fly. And she didn't tell a soul, apart from the people at the flying club. And she learned to fly and got a flying license, and then she bought a Cessna aircraft. I don't know how she kept that quiet, and it was one of the high-end ones and one of the fastest ones. And then she started to enter flying races, and that's when the gig was up and the word had to go out because she needed a navigator so she could focus on flying. And Pops, my father-in-law, he was trained in navigation, and she needed him. Well, you can imagine if he had been a pilot, he's just floored when she tells him. Floored even more when he finds out how far she'd come in flying and that she's going into races and that sort of thing. Well, if that wasn't enough, Christmas Day, a bunch of us are gathered, well, pretty well, the whole family gathered in the Smoky Mountains where they lived, and the weather was beautiful. Mim prepared a wonderful meal for us all, and then she announced to everyone, I want everybody to go into the living room, and I've got something I want to show you. So people get curious, and off we all go into the living room. And she plugs a VHS tape into the VHS player beside the television, because that's what you did back in the 90s. And we started to watch this video, and she's boarding a plane. And she's got all kinds of stuff on her, all kinds of equipment, and a few minutes later the plane's in the air, and it became apparent that Mim was going to jump. And we started to look at one another, and then we looked at her, and then we looked at one another. And then the moment came when someone squeals, there she goes, out the window, or the door, whatever it was. And then another guy came out after her, videotaping the whole thing. And it was unbelievable to those of us in the younger generation. We thought she was ancient. Mid-50s. We thought she was ancient, and there she was doing the things that she had dreamed about. Living life the way she wanted to live it. Now, personally, I don't want to jump out of any airplanes, but she did. And anyway, the bucket list, it sort of has this sort of thing in mind. And Carter Chambers and Edward Cole, they jumped out of a plane. Carter Chambers did so very unwillingly, but they did, and they kept ticking things off their list, this bucket list. They're traveling all over the world, and the best hotels, and the best of meals, and yeah, just having a ball. And then there's this scene. Taj Mahal had been in Hong Kong, all over the place. There's this scene on top of the pyramids, one of the pyramids, and Cole's taking another item off the list, and Carter Chambers is talking. And he knew some things. He was this interest in history, and he knew about the ancient Egyptian society and their views of the afterlife. And here they are sitting on top of a pyramid, this thing that was built to sort of help a person into the next world. And he says to Cole, he says, you know, in Egyptian views of the afterlife, the gods will ask a person two things when they are making that journey. And the first is this: did you experience joy
in your life. And the second is like it, but it's tweaked. Did you pass on some joy into the lives of others? And Cole thinks for a moment, in the first one he could say, yeah, he enjoyed some things, but the second one, has he ever helped other people enjoy something? And he couldn't think of anything. He was a businessman. He was always after and serving the almighty dollar, a powerful man who he could do whatever he wanted, and that affected his relationships, and particularly his relationships with people he loved. He'd been married, he was following the Liz Taylor pattern, had 4 marriages, and struggled with those. Particularly difficult relationship with his daughter. He thought he could run her life too. And as we all know, by the time children become more than 2, they don't want you running their lives. And so after one of his shenanigans, his daughter said, "You're as good as dead to me." And this played out in all of Cole's relationships. When he'd been in hospital earlier, not a soul came to see Edward Cole. We all need joy in our life, and joy seems to come in relationships. And if you look at Carter Chambers' side of the bucket list, he chose things that would bring joy. He wasn't interested really in gallivanting all over the world to see this and that, doing stuff. He wanted to laugh until he cried. He wanted to do something good for a total stranger, bringing joy. He wanted to witness something majestic. All things that occur best with other people, in relationship, that sort of thing. And it's never too late, he kept telling Cole, never too late to uncover joy in life and pass joy around it. Carter Chambers had this effect on Edward Cole, but it was slow. He was a hard case. But slowly but surely, he began to get inside his head. And Cole began to see some of the value in the things that were on Carter's list. And, Carter encouraged him to get out, to seek out his daughter, reach out to her, olive branch, make up. And eventually, unfortunately, it was after Carter Chambers had passed away, Cole did this. He went to see his daughter, and he was introduced to a granddaughter that he didn't even know that he had. And there was joy in his heart. And he took this granddaughter into his arms, and he kissed her. And he sort of smiled as he took his list out later, stroked off, kissed the most beautiful girl in the world. Now that's joy. That's joy. And it's never too late for those things to find joy or pass on joy to others. That's a good message in itself. But I have to bring this back to scriptures. So, the real scriptures. But there's another thing in life that our souls crave for. And that's meaning. Purpose. Sometimes we can forget about that, put it off for years or even decades. But down deep, we all want to know what life's about. Mark Twain said one time that the 2 most important days in your life were the day that you were born and the day that you find out why. Bernard Levin, perhaps the greatest English columnist of his generation, he once wrote an article confessing that in spite of his success, he might have wasted his reality. And he writes this, to put it bluntly, have I time left to discover why I was born? Have I not managed to, I haven't managed to answer the question yet. And however many years I have before me, there are certainly not as many as there are behind. There is an obvious danger in leaving it too late. Why do I have to know why I was born? Because, of course, I'm unable to believe that it was an accident. And if it wasn't an accident, it must have meaning. We all need a sense of meaning or purpose or some sense of destiny. Well, there was a great Russian writer, Fyodor Dostoevsky. And he was apparently quite a character in his early days, and he made many mistakes and suffered for years in prison and doing hard labor. Some people would have been angry about that, but Dostoevsky didn't. Some people would have been angry about, politicians or somebody who'd taken away the best of my years, but Dostoevsky still felt good about his life, and in his later novels he'd write about things that communicated grace and forgiveness. Now, there was at one point in Dostoevsky's prison time that the group that he was a part of was judged to be treasonous by Tsar Nicholas I. And after 8 months of imprisonment, he and a number of other political prisoners were brought into a courtyard, and they were subjected to a mock execution. Now, I use the word mock because they didn't know it was a mock execution. They thought it was an execution when the judge read out death by firing squad. And the hearts of many people there dropped, and Dostoevsky said, almost instinctively to the man standing by him, "We will see Christ." And that man let out a bit of a nervous laugh. And then 3 of the men were taken. They're tied to posts while the others looked on. The words are said, "Now, the wages of sin are death." And then they hear the sound of the sergeant at arms saying, "Ready? Aim." And just at that moment, a horseman comes riding in with this prearranged message from the Tsar that said, "The Tsar mercifully commutes your sentences to hard labor." And Dostoevsky and others, they had just looked into the very mouth of death. And he says that some people got angry. One man lost his mind. From that moment on, he decided he would do life differently. And he already had some faith because in prison, the only book that they were allowed was a copy of the New Testament. And he had grown in faith and belief in immortality. And he said that helped him through the years of hardship that came after this event, this mock execution. And it helped him because he came to believe that believing in immortality is the only way to conceive of this life as anything but meaningless. And so why are we here? What am I doing here? We ask that question. Dostoevsky links it with immortality. He links it with the very things that Paul talked about in this passage in 1 Thessalonians, where he encourages Christians to live by faith, to live in love, to live in the hope of salvation, because God has destined us to receive salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ. He died that we may live. Encourage one another. Paul knew this because he had seen Christ, risen Christ. He had had time with people like James and Peter and John and talked about what they had seen and heard and touched with their hands, this Jesus, the Word of life, and the eternity that was revealed in him. And what we are here for is to, in a sense, progress towards that eternity. We may do many other things in the process, but part of it is to progress to the next world and to put on the faith and love and hope that will see us into that world. The bucket list. Edward Cole, he found life. And the film opens and closes with the same words. By any measure, Edward Cole lived more in his last days on earth than that most people manage to bring out in a lifetime. And I know that when he died, his eyes were closed and his heart was open. The film, of course, doesn't get overly religious because that's part of our culture, but it did touch on things. And in the midst of it, it touches on Carter Chambers' faith and how that helped him, how it helped him to see the world in a different way, to seek out joy, to trust in something beyond, to live with peace in his heart, even though he knew what he was facing, and he wanted to pass these things on to Edward Cole. When our hearts, or when our eyes close for that final time, may our hearts be open. Open to life, open to joy, open to Christ, who gives life. Let us pray. Lord, we come to you today. We are thankful for your word. We're thankful for Jesus, who has pointed us in a certain direction. And it's a direction that's filled with hope. It's a direction that's filled with life and joy. And a direction that promises us that there's more to life than this. And we pray that you would keep our hearts open